Yo, what's up, fam? Happy Sunday. Anthony Johnson here, founder of 21 Studios, the Red Man Group, 10,000 other things like the 21 Convention and the 22 Convention, and the campaign to make women great again because they become a bunch of skankaroos. Now, today's Sunday. I don't usually stream on Sundays, but today I am. My good friend and returning guest to my channel, to the Red Man Group, DDJ from Miss Andrew today. Runs a good YouTube channel. It's got about 30,000 subs. He's also on Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, alt tech, new tech, stuff like that. He also runs MissAndrewToday.com, kind of the hub of all this stuff, and is the author of The Feminist Lie. It's a great book. Get it on Amazon. I have like 10 copies behind me somewhere. I just pass them out to friends and shit. It's a very, very good book on how stupid and retarded and malicious feminism is. Now, without further ado, we welcome DDJ to the show. What's up, homie?
Hey, man. It's good to be back. How are you doing?
Good, man. Doing very good. And it's good to have you back as well. It's been a couple months at least since I've had you on the channel.
Yeah, it's been a while. I've been busy doing some other stuff, so I totally understand.
Yeah.
But I think that, the conversation we're going to have today, I think it's a little bit overdue with regard to the manosphere, and it's important to kind of bring these issues to everybody's attention so they can kind of get an idea. Because, if we can't really learn from our history, we're going to repeat the same mistakes. So
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so today's show, we're going to focus on the history of the manosphere, facts and frauds, facts and fiction. There's a lot to go through. DDJ is something of an expert. Like me, he's been around a long time. Old timers. We were there 10,000 years ago at the start of the war, or whatever you want to call it. So we're going to look at different issues, both in the manosphere kind of generally, and then some more specific movements like the men's rights movement, fathers' rights, and other kind of communities and stuff like that. DDJ, do you want your audio is muted? Yeah, do you want to kind of kick it off? And you basically had some bullet points you wanted to kind of start off with here.
Yeah, I mean, I think originally when we talk about the manosphere, really the idea of the manosphere is relatively new when it comes like from a historical perspective, right?
Yeah.
There used to not be tribes as such. So there was a lot of like communities that were online, and those communities revolved around certain interests. So, you had like for instance, you had the MGTOW community, but back in the day, they didn't call it the MGTOW community. The MGTOW terminology, the men going their own way, that terminology, that phrasing never existed, and it was developed obviously by people in those communities. But it was interesting because a lot of those people involved in those conversations, they weren't just actual MGTOW. Many of them were red pill. Many of them were, they had game. Some were from the PUA community. And it was basically kind of a group of communities to really understand the social contract between men and women, and kind of to describe some of the problems and to provide support and wisdom for each other, And some of these things went back 20 years, and you always hear certain people talk about, the three retards of the manosphere. And I use that as a joke. I mean, but they called them the three R's. But the reality is that there were so many other people who back then actually were more relevant. The only difference was is that these people kind of branded themselves as like this thing, out of some sixth sense of narcissism. And what's interesting is that.
Well, let's pause and drop some names. Like I got most familiar, my introduction to the manosphere was in high school in 2005. So I've been around a long fucking time through the PUA community, the seduction community. And back then, in that community at least, the big figures were like David D'Angelo, Mystery, Eric von Markovic, Neil Strauss eventually in the 2000s, Ross Jeffries, who had a fucking movie made about him. What was it? Magnolia? Yeah, with Tom Cruise.
Right.
Al Curry was around, Hypnotica. Like there was a lot of big figures back then that were, eventually someone got their own TV show like this.
You muted yourself.
Yeah, it's weird. What the fuck? Anyway, there's a lot of huge figures back in the manosphere, even like way back then. And yeah, it was more compartmentalized too. Like I eventually became aware of the men's rights movement in like 2010, but even that took like 5 years of hanging around. Brad P, someone mentioned too. Yeah.
Well, and I think that a lot of people, the manosphere was actually developed as kind of an evolution of the men's rights movement. And, the men's rights movement, it at some level has even evolved to the fathers' rights movement, and even further evolved to they call it the 50-50 shared parenting movement, which is kind of the biggest incarnation of that today. But the thing
Yeah.
is that, and the thing that I really want to think about, or have people think about, is the idea of the red pill and the blue pill. And what I mean by that is that,
Mm.
the red pill is the uncomfortable truth according to the original Matrix. The blue pill is the comfortable lie. The reason I bring that up is because in the early days of the manosphere, especially in what was traditionally considered men's rights communities, there were a lot of uncomfortable truths that people really didn't want to accept. And a lot, I mean, it created a lot of PTSD in a lot of people when they started realizing this is this is a severe issue. And what you started seeing people feeling insecure about criticism from within the manosphere community. And what I'm
Mm.
talking about is like, and this is where all the tribalism came from, right? So the MGTOW people took issue with the PUAs. The PUAs took issue with the MGTOW people. You had some kind of traditionalists that were there. You had a lot of this internal drama that's there. And so what ended up happening is you started seeing these groups kind of stratify and kind of divide. And it really, I mean, it created a lot of problems for the manosphere, and it created a lot of issues because what a lot of people don't understand is, like, if you go back to the men's rights community, um, the infighting was huge. And the infighting was huge in the MRA community. It's still huge in the manosphere community. And it's been going on that I've seen, as far as like very publicly. It's been happening since probably 2015, 2016, and moving
Yeah.
forward.
At
And
least.
yeah, because it used to be that the manosphere was more intellectual in nature. So you had a lot of people who, they had degrees, they were very well spoken, they were very well read. In addition to that, they were just highly articulate in both verbally and in writing. And so they were able to talk about these things in a way that people could, like the everyman could really comprehend. And so, yeah, and Naroki, that's perfect. Exactly. The MGTOW and the PUA community, in fact, all the tribes in the Manosphere, we all have more in common than we have as far as division. And the reason that is
Yeah.
because we all 90% agree on everything. It's that 10% that divides us. But the reason I bring this up, and the reason that it's important, is because a lot of people were threatened by the manosphere, and you see this in the MRA community, for example. So what you saw is, you saw people infiltrating the MRA community, and then in addition to that, within the MRA community, a lot of predators were able to hide in that community and then claim victimhood falsely. And they were accepted in that community. They're like, yeah, yeah. And then they would try to get free legal advice,
Let's
support.
pause here. I want to pause
But
here for a second. So when I say predators, sometimes I'm referring to frauds, but you're just generally commercial frauds. But it sounds like in the fathers' rights movement, you're referring to guys who were like legitimately criminals, were correctly convicted of various domestic violence crimes, accusations.
yeah,
You mean like actual criminal predators who are hiding in that movement?
yeah,
Is that what you mean?
I would actually say that the frauds that we see in the manosphere today are criminals as well. They're just white collar criminals. That's the
Yeah,
difference. But
yeah.
when I talk about predators in the MRA community, which, by the way, I've been involved off and on, or exposed to the MRA community, since like 1996. Okay,
Yeah.
so to kind of
Wow.
give you an idea how long I've been watching the community. Now, in
Okay,
recent
okay,
years,
grandpa.
I got your grandpa hanging. And so, but my point is that these people were guilty of actual domestic violence.
Yeah.
They're the people giving these women black eyes, or beating them up, or assaulting them. They're the people beating their kids. They're the people that are, they fly off in a drug addicted or alcoholic rage. They're the people that are physically, emotionally, psychologically, and sexually abusing their kids. Okay.
But then they want to hide behind guys who were innocent, falsely accused. Yeah, that's sick.
Well, they did. And I'll tell you, they were very successful at doing it. And so back in the day, you had a lot of people like me and others who would, help these people with their cases. Well, what you'd find out is, you dig into their case, and all of a sudden you've got like an accusation of physical abuse. Okay. Well, a lot of people get falsely accused of physical abuse. Well, then you've got pictures of the kids with bruises on them, right?
Whoa.
Now you're like, okay, this is a problem. Or you've got an arrest record, or you've got a criminal conviction, and it's not a criminal conviction based on hearsay, which some of them are witch hunts, but it's a criminal conviction based on evidence by a jury of your peers. And it's, again, evidence of assault. Sometimes these people admit it, sometimes they don't actually understand what's going on. And so you have this whole contingent within the MRA community of people who absolutely should have lost their kids. And they're upset about it, and they say the same things that legitimate victims do. As far as,
Yeah.
and I say victims, I'm talking about victims of the family court system. Okay. And anybody who's followed my content for any length of time knows that I have a real big issue with the discrimination that happens on a daily basis in the family court system. But with that out of the way, that's kind of how the MRA community happened. Well, as it evolved, a lot of people kind of backed away from these people because they started realizing that a lot of these people who were rightfully lost their children, what they found out was that their voices were the loudest in these groups. And so you would have these people, they would self-destruct the group if they were found out. And it's no different than like a female narcissist, right? If a female narcissist, or she's got a borderline personality disorder, or she's got some other sort of situation going on, and you discover the truth, right? Like she's got a notch count in the hundreds, that kind of thing, or she's been lying to you, she'll go out of her way to do scorched earth on you and destroy you because you know the truth. And that's the same is true with male narcissists, but feminists talk about male narcissists enough, so let's talk about the female ones per se. Granted,
Yeah.
that's not the subject of this video. Going back to the point was that you had all these people who would destroy these fathers' rights communities, these men's rights communities, once they got called out. They would make the drama so toxic and so cancerous that all the people who really cared about the father's rights and the actual victims, they just leave because they couldn't tell the truth from the lie, right? Especially when you're on the internet. So that's why you have to present evidence. That's why you have to sit here and go, okay, I need to look at the evidence for myself. I need to think for myself. And what I found, especially in the manosphere, is that the majority of the manosphere do not have critical thinking skills. They don't have any level of deductive reasoning. And finally, they don't have any ability to truly navigate conflict in a masculine sort of way.
Let's break
And
this down a little bit,
go
though,
ahead.
because when you say lack of critical thinking, what I would interpret it, I would interpret it, I think. So let me reframe it and tell me if this is what you're saying. They lack any kind of skepticism. So if fraud makes a claim, whether it's in the PUA community, I banged 1,000 women or some shit, right? Which a few guys have, but by far most guys have not even fucking close. The father's rights guys claim they're innocent. It's like, do you have any evidence of this, or is there any reasoning to it? So it's just
Well,
like there's no skepticism. Basically, it's just claim stuff, and everyone's like, "Oh, okay, I totally believe you."
well,
It's fucking sick.
this goes back to a lack of institutional wisdom, a lack of masculine institutional wisdom. And it goes back to where, like we were talking to you about the other day offline, this goes back to our very first conversation about extended family, the importance of the extended family. Because
Yeah,
you see, back prior to the rise of feminism, you would have your uncles and your aunts and your grandfather and your family friends and the people you went to church with and the people you were in the community with. They would teach you how to spot these things or how to think critically and use logic and to be able to be able to really have an opportunity to think about this stuff through. So like, for instance, if you weren't thinking of things logically, your uncle might go, hey, look, you're not looking at this correctly. Look at it this way, come to your own conclusion. We don't have that today. And when you
yeah,
when you listen to a lot of Manosphere content creators who make videos, who have classes they give, or they put out content as far as like their coaching material and things like that, they don't talk about that in those terms either. They'll talk about it as it's narrowly defined to the to their particular message, right? So they'll tie it into their message, but they won't tie it into kind of the greater they won't apply it to other elements of your life. So these are transferable skills. So critical thinking skills are just as important to identify a type of woman you're with as they are in the job market, as they are in navigating personal and professional relationships and being able to have that. So that's what I'm talking about as far as critical thinking is concerned.
Well, I want to pause there too, because one of the most insidious things, and Dr. Sean Smith pointed this out on the Red Man group a few months ago. Basically, one of the most insidious things you'll see in the manosphere specifically is these guys they'll give you the talking points, right? They'll say the right things to allude to what we're talking about, but they don't really mean it. So they'll promise you like, oh, you need to be free, you need to be free, you need to think for yourself and be your own man and be the best version of yourself and all this shit, right? And it sounds good on paper, but it's just bullshit
Well,
because
those
there's
are
nothing backing it up, and they don't actually mean it. It's a facade. It's an illusion. They want to
well,
control you. They want to put you in like a funnel of whatever their particular ideology is, the roll-up hill or the
right.
butt-plugged alpha or whatever.
Well, and the thing you got to remember is that those are feminist talking points that have been repackaged to push out to men, and that's the issue. So masculine wisdom is inherently different than feminine wisdom. And so while some men have feminine traits and some women have masculine traits, by and large, we don't promote healthy masculine wisdom or wisdom from a masculine lens. And so that's why when I talk about critical thinking, I talk about deductive reasoning, and I talk about this idea of being able to navigate conflict. The reason those things are important is because I would say at least 90% of every content creator in every tribe of the manosphere since at least 2015 does not have any healthy conflict management skills. They
Hmm.
will disagree with somebody, and you can see this. Like, don't take my word for it. Think on if for the people watching this video, think about how many times you've seen two content creators who got together and they disagreed about something that was minor or relatively inconsequential, and all of a sudden it turns into World War III, and it's not anything of consequence. In the end of the day, it's a controversy, but it creates this drama, right? And now you're in a situation where this drama has been created, and these people are fighting, and they're drama marketing. These are traditional female tactics. They're right up there with gossip and shaming and running away from the issue, which is something women often do when they get caught cheating, right? And then
Yeah,
when they finally address their issue, they don't do it head on, but like a woman, they enlist useful idiots to wage a proxy campaign against their critics because they
yeah,
lack the masculinity to confront their detractors head on. You see, it
that's
used
right.
to be, like if you were face to face with somebody and you disagreed, if that disagreement was strong enough, you'd end up with a fist fight.
Yeah,
And then once that fist fight ended, you'd realize, oh my God, I still disagree with you, but goddamn, that left hook was really good, dick.
yeah,
Right? And then you'd go drink and you'd laugh about it later. And you might still disagree, but you both gained a newfound respect for one another because you were willing to defend that. That is a uniquely masculine conflict resolution skill.
well,
And
I think in the manosphere too, though, there's so many like the whole culture, and then the manosphere is a reflection of that with people who find it. There's just so much beta male energy, so they're very conflict avoidant, is how I view it. Any kind of conflict at all, like whether it's legitimate or illegitimate, and that to me is the what annoys me. These guys get down any kind of exposing somebody with facts and evidence, no matter how thorough and diligent it is. A lot of people will appreciate that, but a lot of people get butthurt too. It doesn't matter if you're right. They don't give a fuck. Right,
oh,
wrong, truth,
yeah,
fiction, doesn't matter.
and I try not to use like the alpha beta paradigm.
Oh, I
Um,
love it. We got to make man alpha again, bro.
no, well, that's not my point. I mean, alpha is a temporary state of mind. And whereas a lot of people who are beta are actually, they're the shield carriers and things like that. So your alphas are going to be your leaders, they're going to be your generals and things like that. But your betas are going to be your soldiers. And
Yeah.
I like to frame it in terms of, and that's really just a question of semantics, but I like to frame it in terms of female energy versus male energy, because women are not as strong and they're not as powerful and they're not as physically intimidating as men are in general, if you look at it from a position of the genders, right? Which, by the way, there's only two. And so you have this scenario here where women who don't have the physical strength, or they don't have the ability to bring force to bear, they use these tactics. Like I said, they use soft tactics like gossip and shaming,
Shame. Yeah.
and yeah, and ad hom attacks, personal attacks, character attacks, and then they enlist useful idiots to wage proxy wars. They sit there and they go, well, that guy just insulted me. Aren't you going to attack him? Right.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. Right. Like,
Well, that's for the beta males though. That's how they weaponize these beta male slaves, like workhorses, and
well,
they're attack drones.
well, and what they do is they're weaponizing the male biological need to procreate, right? That's really what they're doing. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
lizard brain sort of thing. That's why the tactic works, and it
They
works
hi
regardless of
they
your politics.
hijack it. They hijack it like a parasite almost.
Correct. Well, I wouldn't say almost, but yeah. Um, but I think that when it comes to that, though, you have to understand that a lot of controversies turn into gossip, and so all of a sudden you have a Jerry Springer style civil war amongst the quote unquote tribes of the manosphere, the communities of the manosphere, and it creates this level of tribalism, and it divides men more than it brings them together. And it's like what Naroki said early on. Most of the different communities of manosphere, we agree upon a lot more than we disagree. In fact, when the whole idea, like the original MGTOW stuff came forward and the red pill stuff came forward 10, 15, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, a lot of PUAs, they went drinking with the MGTOW. They went drinking with the red pill people. They went drinking with the cradcons. Like everybody communicated with one another and they had their philosophical disagreements, but um, they weren't the hill to die on, right? And so now you fast forward to 2022 and you have a lot of content creators who've come and gone because all they're doing is going on the internet and they're using it as their own personal therapy through projection, and they're
Yes.
just and they're just sitting here and they're whining and they're bitching and they're moaning, and they don't bring anything positive to the table. And occasionally they will, like a broken clock is right twice a day, right, as long as it's not digital.
Yeah.
um but
Let me put out my theory
Go
here.
ahead.
I think, based on what you're saying and my own thinking previously too, our own conversations, I think as each tribe of the manosphere independently has become, to some degree, independently has become infiltrated by more and more frauds, commercial operators, white collar criminals, hardcore criminals that, like in the fathers' rights movement, they're actually guilty of stuff, hiding behind innocent men. As each tribe has been more infiltrated by these frauds and more overrun, that is, in my view, what is actually causing the different groups to fight more over time. And so people look at the groups fighting, and there's some truth to that, like as an observation. But I think what's causing it is that it's actually become more fraudulent over time, and there has not been enough pushback from guys like me and you and whoever else, John Anthony even, exposing aggressively these frauds in each community and stuff. It's shame. It's basically looked down upon to expose someone, no matter no matter how egregious the crime is and the fraud is, because, and I think this comes back to something you said a long time ago that I loved and I never forgot it. There's a red pill blind spot, and that's not specific to the red pill community or MGTOW or the PUA or anything, right? It's the minute someone comes into the manosphere in general or a particular tribe, everybody around them has a red pill blind spot. They're like, oh, that guy says he hates feminism and he wants to help men. He wants to help men be the best version of themselves. I just They basically have an automatic trust kind of system built in their head that's like totally stupid. It's
Well,
like
it's naivete.
it's naive, it's robotic, it's like
Yeah.
retarded.
Well, and that's the problem is that way of thinking, and that's the thing. That's how you can tell when your community lacks critical thinking skills, when your community lacks deductive reasoning, and when your community lacks common sense. Is
Yeah.
because here's the thing, and I always say this, like you always hear these people, they go, well, I don't have any reason not to trust them, so I have to trust them. And you see this a lot with male and female relationships, right? So you get this woman who she's love bombing you because she's borderline personality disorder and she wants your paycheck, right? So she turns the sex up to 11, she's orgasming all the time, everything is great. And then she's like, but you need to trust me. Well, the reality is that no, I don't. I need to look at the evidence and I need to see if the evidence supports any kind of faith in you. So what I tell people is, instead of distrusting people you don't know, instead of trusting people you know or don't know, you need to look at it as a three-tiered spectrum instead of this false dichotomy of trust versus distrust. Because in the center of trust versus distrust is this center where you don't know that person.
Yeah.
So and I call it the don't trust position. Okay, so you have three positions. You have trust, don't trust, and distrust. And the reason that you don't trust them is because you don't know them. They are an unknown quantity. It would be like, going out to the bar or going to a coffee shop or going to a local park and finding a stranger and going, I don't really know you, but can you manage my finances? Right?
Yeah.
Only a dipshit would do that, right? Only a person who lacked any kind of common sense would do that. Well, the same thing is true with a lot of people that you meet. And so I always tell people, look, you really don't know someone until you've been in their physical space and you physically know them, not in the internet, but the real world, that you've known
Mhm.
them for at least they've gone through all seasons twice. So 2 years, right? Because
Yeah.
in a 2 year period, you're going to really understand what this person is about, how they handle stress, how they handle conflict, what kind of integrity they have, what's their ethical standards, what are their values, and so like if you're a hardcore Christian and this person is a hardcore atheist, a secular atheist, and he thinks that it's morally acceptable to stick a dildo up his ass and that everybody should do this and we should all do
Well,
it in
hang on.
public, maybe.
Jack Murphy's a proud Christian now. I mean, he's you can't if you attack him, you're not a Christian and you're not an American. Didn't you read his newsletter?
You know what? Look, just because they say they are, I mean, that's like a woman saying she's honest, right? So,
Well, it's another form of fraud though, and the
well,
Christians have this too, man. They get
it's
infiltrated by frauds left and right.
right,
It's
but
sick.
the issue is self authentication, right? And I don't have a problem with self authentication if the actions back it up. So, like for instance, I know a lot of people think that Roosh and his conversion to Christianity is a scam. I get that they have a right to their opinion, but if
Yep.
you look at what Roosh did and you look at what he's doing, those things are consistent. Now,
No,
that's
I completely disagree. Roosh is a huge fraud, including with the Christianity
oh,
stuff.
oh,
Now
oh, no, I
he's not a
understand that.
fraud. I think he's fucked. Like I don't mean he's a fraud as an old PUA thing though. Like I think he actually did fuck a couple hundred women and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, but
Maybe he's autistic or something, but the Christian stuff I think it's a scam. It's a marketing
right,
shift.
right. But what I'm saying is that his Christian conversion from a public viewpoint is very consistent. Now,
It's very no, I disagree. It's very convincing, and he did this on purpose, and he has a history of doing this kind of sketchy,
oh
manipulative,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
intelligent
But,
shit.
but again, I mean, I understand hashtag triggered. But what I'm saying
Yeah.
is that so we're clear, and the point I was trying to make was that it's very consistent, and I don't trust it, but I don't distrust it either. And that's because I have no dog in the fight, right? Roosh
Mm.
can do whatever the fuck he wants to do. And
Yeah,
if,
true.
and if he's sincere, then he's sincere. If he helps other Christians find the Christian path, that's great. But the reality is when it comes to me and my personal opinion, I don't have a dog in that fight, so I don't have an opinion. And so
You mean it as a manosphere dog in the fight, or you're a Christian, right?
I'm a Christian,
Yeah.
but I don't have a dog in the fight in that what he says does not impact me in any way. And the problem that we have in the manosphere is that people are so desperate for relevance that they go after people who really don't have any impact on what they do and they don't have any impact on things. So like I look at it as like I've been a paralegal for a really long time. It's
Mm.
like a lawsuit, right? So in order to file a lawsuit and be successful, you have to have an action. Somebody has to have done something. So, I'm driving down
Mhm.
the street, somebody hits me with their car. Well, did they do it maliciously? They're like, "Oh my God, this guy's he wears a sombrero, so I need to hit him with my car, right?" So, okay, so then there's malicious. Well, then the third tier of the lawsuit is, did I suffer any damages, right? And
Mhm.
that's the piece where a lot of people don't understand lawsuits. They don't understand the law. So you might have an absolute bad faith, malicious act directed toward you by somebody not on the internet but on the real world. But I mean, this applies to the internet as well, right? So you have this action that somebody does, but it doesn't cause you any damage.
Mm.
Like it doesn't impact your job, it doesn't impact your wage earning potential, it doesn't impact your personal life, it doesn't impact your professional life. So you have no damages, and without damages, no matter what they did, you have no lawsuit. Okay.
Mm.
The same thing is true in the manosphere, but a lot of manosphere people, because again, they lack the deductive reasoning, they lack the critical thinking, they lack emotional fortitude, and they lack the ability to manage or to um, perceive conflict in an objective way. They're like, well, this person said this mean word about me, and I need to respond with a video. Well, no, you don't. Just
Yeah, who
just
cares? Who cares about that shit? Yeah, that's
yeah.
just that's a smack talking smack. It's like little
Did
kids.
you
Who cares?
did you lose half your subscribers? Did you
Yeah.
lose your cash? Is this the only form of income you have and you've lost it? Okay, maybe you have damage at that point. Maybe you need to respond at that point. But look, there's always going to be turd flinging monkeys in the sidelines throwing shit at other people. You're always going to see that, right? That's the thing about the turd flinging monkey sitting on the sideline, is the fact that they are on the sideline. And I use that in the initial sense. I don't use that as a disparagement of the content creator. But I think that the issue that we have too, and you brought this up, and I think you really tied this in a bow. You said there's a lot of frauds within the manosphere. There's a lot of shills in the manosphere. There's a lot of people in the manosphere. My belief, and this ties into a larger perception. My belief about Jack Murphy was that Jack Murphy was a left-wing infiltrator and
Yeah.
created a brand specifically to lead men back to the plantation. And here's what I mean by that. So
Well, do you think? I think he was also probably a government, like somewhere on the government payroll.
either
Do you agree with that?
governmental, or he was working for a non
Yeah, institution. Yeah.
correct,
Or some
like some,
institute or some
a
bullshit.
think tank or something like that. There was somebody behind him assisting him. And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
reason I bring that up is because he came out of and when I think about Jack Murphy, I think about Anita Sarkeesian. And I look at the similarities between the whole Jack Murphy narrative.
She's a feminist YouTuber or
So,
something.
yeah, and we'll get to that. So Anita
Okay.
Sarkeesian was part of Gamergate, but she was a
Yep.
feminist, and she ran a feminist thing called Feminist Frequency. And the issue with Feminist Frequency was they were saying, well, there's misogyny in video games, and we need to change this. And we don't like the fact that in the video game, this basically, this woman has a nice ass, right? So it's sexualization in video games. Well, the problem with Anita Sarkeesian is when she first came out, she was super credible. Everybody was like, yeah, this is great. This is an issue. She's pointed out this issue. She's stunning and brave, right? And then you find out she wasn't a video gamer. Like, she spent 2 years learning how to play video games. There's photos of her with a chest high stack of video games, and it turns out that she actually posed for that picture. She didn't own it, right? It's like the guy who poses next to the luxury car that he found at the coffee shop, and he's like, "Hey, dude, look at my new ride," right?
Yeah.
On social
Yep.
media, and he's like, "Yeah, I got this car the other day. Check it out." It's success porn, right? So
Yep.
that's what she was doing. And then everybody found out she was a fraud and she was a bigot, and that her whole identity was this lie, right? And that's the thing that I really like. I got doxxed a couple years ago, and I think it's hilarious because people know the truth about me, and they realize that the shit that I said on the internet since 2017, when I first started being on videos, and to today, it's been consistent, right? So anytime you hear about any kind of detractors when it comes to me, you don't hear about them basically attacking my credibility, because they can't, because I didn't lie. So you fast forward, you're right, and you look at the Cuck of Kiev, Jack Murphy, and you look at this whole scenario, you realize he came onto the scene from nowhere, okay? And like every other Manosphere grifter, he shows his face on the screen, but he lies about who he is. He can't even tell you his real name. His real name's like, I don't know, it's like Simp Goldberg or something.
John Goldman.
Whatever. So Simp Goldberg is better. So anyway, it's a description, right? It's not an insult. And so my point is that this guy, he made a lot of money. He was working for a school district. This guy was making six figures, and then when he gets caught out doing this degenerate behavior, where he's basically saying, "Look, in order to be masculine, you have to be submissive, right? In order to be masculine, you have to get pegged. You have to have sex with college boys. You have to have sex possibly with younger children. You have to be completely degenerate. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm a Christian." And that's what he's saying, and that's the messaging he's giving. Well, what's happening is he's doing to the manosphere, to the dating community, to the PUA community, he's doing what a lot of MGTOW content creators did from 2016 forward. They're going, well, it's okay to sexually assault women as a MGTOW person. It's okay to force them in as chattel into slavery. When the reality is, if you're walking away from women, women shouldn't necessarily matter per se. So I think that when we talk about Jack Murphy, he looks like an AstroTurf campaign in hindsight. And yeah, there's a lot of funny jokes that are important, to bring out, to kind of bring attention to this thing. But when you look at it and you kind of take a step back from the drama tubing, you take a step back from the memes and the jokes and everything else, you realize that Jack Murphy, like a lot of people, were part of a long con to destroy the credibility of the manosphere and to create civil strife within the manosphere. In fact, there's other support for people outside, like feminists and social justice warriors and government agents infiltrating the manosphere, and they sit there in silence for 2 years, or they become content creators and they're content creators for 6 months and they have this rapid growth and no one knows why, right? So like you have content creators now, for example, that identify as MGTOW, right? And you see them, they got 50,000 subs, they've got 100,000 subs, they got 200,000 subs, they've got 3, 4, 5, 600,000 subs, and they're saying the same exact thing. They got people like me demonetized. They got people like other big town content creators. They got them kicked off the YouTube, and YouTube is promoting their content. That's how you can tell that that person's AstroTurf, right?
Yeah.
Because they're saying the same things that other content creators are, with some exceptions, but they're getting promoted, whereas the regular content creators who originated these concepts are getting they're getting banned, they're having their videos struck and everything else. But the main difference between those content creators and the actual MGTOW like me and a few others, or people who are red pill content creators, like truly red pill content creators, is the fact that these people are degenerate. They tell you half the story. They say, or they sit there and they feed into the idea, like MGTOW, for example, they feed into the idea that you should hate women, or they feed into the idea that you should complain about women. And women complain about women. Men should not do that. If you're talking about a woman and it's a public service announcement and you're doing it to educate someone, that's not complaining about a woman. That's basically showing valid criticism and through articulation, right? But if all you're doing is video after video, all you're doing is bitching about the same thing over and over and over again, maybe people need to pay attention and go, well, maybe that's not MGTOW content, or maybe he's paying too much attention to these women and not enough attention on how to make men better. Well, the same thing is true in the different tribes of the manosphere, specifically the dating community, the PUAs and stuff like that. And you look at Jack Murphy and you realize, he's saying on one side of his mouth, he's saying, bro, you got to be more alpha. And then on the other side of his mouth, he's going, and in order to be alpha, you have to stick sex toys up your butt and you have to let your wife sleep with other men. Okay.
Yep.
So you can't.
And you gotta pee on her too.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you got to let her pee you, right? Have hashtag golden shower. And so the point is that these people are running AstroTurf campaigns. And I personally believe, and again, this is a theory, I haven't proven it, but if you look at the content, it makes a lot of sense, where you have these people creating these communities within the manosphere specifically to dilute the message. And this kind of brings me to, what we talked about earlier, where I wanted to discuss the red pill, blue pill paradigm.
It's almost like we need an attorney general in the manosphere to prosecute and go after these guys.
Well, I mean, I do my part, right? All of us do our part, and like when I called out Rollo Tomasi for doxing the attendees at your 21 convention in 2019, and he specifically doxed them to a feminist New York Times writer so she could do like a gonzo ambush interview in the middle of the night with him. When I called him out on that, he got so upset about that he still takes my name in vain, and he's still, that DDJ guy, he's this or he's that. Well, it's because it's an uncomfortable truth. I mean, I'm living rent free in the man's head, and the only reason I know about it is because somebody told me about it a couple weeks ago. So you have to understand.
Dude, they accused me of paying you $1,000 to do those videos. Like,
oh no, yeah. Just so we're clear, so anybody can put this away. And again, if it ever gets to any kind of lawsuit, you'll see it in Discovery. Anthony Johnson and no one related to 21 Studios ever paid me for the videos that I did that accurately depict the grifter that is the fraud father. No one's ever done that.
You did those pro bono out of the goodness of your heart because he's a piece of shit.
I did it specifically not because he's a piece of shit. I did it because I was trying to show people in the manosphere, this is who you avoid. Right.
It was a public service.
It was a public service. And if you look at my content going back years, I don't necessarily do hit videos on anybody. But when I see that there's something that where somebody's trying to victimize the manosphere, or they're trying to defraud the manosphere, whether it be the red pill coin or fake MGTOW or whatever, I call it out. I call it out and I say, look, because here's the issue. If you're a content creator and you have a platform to speak, then you also have a duty and an ethical responsibility to provide some protections to the people you speak to. Because sometimes what you say will prevent someone from committing suicide. What you say will click with somebody because of the way you've said it, and that will lead them to a better life. It'll kind of click for them and go, yeah, that makes sense. They may disagree with 90% of what you say, but that one message that you did changes their life. And we've all had that experience where somebody's reached out to us and went, DDJ or Anthony or whomever, you said this thing and it changed my life. And there was a time where, Rollo's plagiarism, called The Rational Male, where those plagiarisms, they helped men, and they helped a lot of men. And
Yeah.
and that wasn't necessarily because Rollo said it. It was because the wisdom was there for Rollo to say. So, like, a lot of what I say when it comes to the manosphere, it's not necessarily unique to me. It's just that I'm able to provide a lens that people can kind of associate with. And I think, and the same thing is true with, 21 Convention and, with you, because there will be people that you'll be able to reach that I never will. And that's just the nature of the human condition. But I think that going back to this whole idea of,
If I can pause you real quick, I think the difference with guys like me and you, Noah Ravoy, Noah has commented this to me,
I do, yeah.
that what I'm trying to do, and I think you're trying to do, is you're trying to take care of the commons of the manosphere. And generally, for the past 25 years, no one fucking does that because everybody's just a commercial operator, and that's all they fucking care about is money. I'm
Yeah.
kind of a sociopath for the truth and like reality and reason. So that's what, and frauds are anti-reality. They're always making up fake realities to sell shit. Jack Murphy is a perfect example of that. Whatever the motivations were, left-wing infiltrator, government infiltrator, Fed, who knows, right? Whatever those details are, the bottom line is he was faking reality and aggressively and putting that on guys to probably harm the manosphere as a movement, and then also rope all these guys in and kind of steal money from them and ruin their lives for profit. And a lot of these guys is basically what they do. It's predatory and parasitic, like vampires, basically, is how I view it. And I just care about the movement. Like, this movement changed my life for the better for the past 15, 16 years. My life would be a disaster without the manosphere due to various reasons of how I grew up and stuff. And I really love how it's turned out, and I'm thankful for that. Socrates is the same way. It changed his life for the better. That's why he fights with me and puts out his messages through speeches and whatnot and helping me out with, the frauds and shit. Anyway, end rant, but it's about the commons, I think, is the difference.
Well, it is, but it's also, if you really care about men, and let's be honest, there's a lot of men out there that they're vulnerable, they've been victimized, they've been downtrodden, and even men who are financially successful, right? They're attacked constantly and by people trying to make them insecure by doing all these different things. And let's be honest, the feminist machine, the social justice machine, they are threatened by the manosphere. They are threatened by healthy masculine men. Okay, that is a threat to them. And so, while it's funny to talk about Jack Murphy, and it's funny to talk about Donovan Sharp and some of these other people, the point is that don't focus on those people per se. If you're listening to this video and you're not a content creator, don't focus on these people. Focus on people like them, because the goal here is not necessarily, or I should say, it's not exclusively to make fun of them, which it's easy to do, right? Because these people are, I mean, it's like a Mystery Men style dark comedy, right? The issue is focus on the people like them, because then you can go, well, this new guy come on the scene and he looks like a grifter like Jack Murphy, or he looks like a fraud father like Rollo, or like somebody in the comments like Milo. So you have to understand, these people, they don't have any, the ruminal order, exactly. They don't have any job skills, right? They can't make money in the real world. They're homeless. They don't own their own house. They don't have a car. They sit here and they push forward and they say, look, look at me, look at what I can do. It reminds me of that old Mad TV where they have this skit where this adult guy, he's like 6'5" and he's like, look what I can do. Right. And it's a joke. And you see these people and they gas themselves up, and then they say, okay, I think I'm amazing, so you should think I'm amazing too. And then they get 4 or 5 grifters together, and they're all masturbating each other like a big fucking psychological circle jerk. And they're like, I think he's amazing, you think he's amazing, we're all amazing, right? And you're trying to figure out like when the gay orgy is so you can avoid it, right?
Everybody's amazing. How do I get on this fucking
yeah
this cuck orgy?
Yeah, well, it is. It is, and so, but it's the false fraud, right?
I'm gonna
It's
spit out my coffee. It's fucking sick of this
my
shit.
bad. So I'll try to time that between sips. How about that?
Let me put some more memes in. I need more memes.
Right, right. So, but I mean, the idea here is, though, the reason I bring this up is because the reason I started Misandry today, the reason why my channel is called Misandry today, the reason why I'm doing the hashtag shill alert for the brand name Misandry today, is because it's happening. It's true. It's misandry is institutional in nature, because for the last 20 or 30 years, you have feminists and social justice media. You've got politicians. You've got churches that have been infiltrated. All of our institutions have been ideologically captured by feminists and by social justice warriors and by communists. And they have to destroy men. And the reason that they have to destroy men is because men protect their communities, they protect their families, and they protect their children, and they protect everything that we as a society holds dear. So if you destroy men, you destroy that community and that family's protectors, so that you can abuse children and you could abuse women. That is the issue. The dirty secret of feminism, one of the many, is that the safest place for a woman in 2022 is in the home, raising her biological children that she birthed with the biological father within the bounds of Christian marriage. They've done studies on this. This is the safest place for women. But nobody wants to tell you that, because if they tell you that, it destroys the feminist lie that all men are evil, right? And it
Yeah.
destroys this idea. And don't get me wrong. I mean, at some level, if you go back 1,000 years, men were genetically disposable because they were there to protect the women, so the women could carry on the race. I get all that. But in 2022, the rules have changed at some level, because now women have been indoctrinated to destroy their lives. And they've been indoctrinated to destroy their families. I know of women who've been married 15, 20 years. They go to church every Sunday and they're getting the pipe on the side. And
Yep.
the guy thinks, oh, my wife loves me. This is amazing, right? So, and that's not really the case. The case is that, yeah, she loves him, but she's still practicing hypergamy. She's still stepping outside the bounds of marriage, even if that marriage survives. So that becomes an issue. But beyond all that, the issue that I see as far as the history of the manosphere is concerned, everyone is so threatened by positive masculinity that they have to attack it. And so you see these shills that come into these communities, whether they're fake PUAs or whether they're fake MGTOW or they're fake red pill, and all they do is detract from the community. They have no positive messaging. They have no ability to positively message. And what I mean by positively messaging is, I mean reinforcing positive masculinity, reinforcing natural masculinity, reinforcing men when they make their decisions. That doesn't happen. And the reason it doesn't happen is because that's not why they're there. They're there to be grifters. They're there because they're narcissists. They're there because they're activists, and they're there because they hate men. Now, not
Yep.
all the not
That
all
last
those,
part, I think, is one of the most important things you've said in this entire stream, because, and I know you just said it and you mean
yeah,
it, but it was kind of
yeah.
like you went through it. But people don't realize that about these frauds, whether it's Jack Murphy or Fresh and Fit to some degree, but particularly guys like the fraud father, Rollery. They hate men. They hate masculinity at a deep level. And this is hard for people to understand because it's like a paradox, right? They're at least pretending to want to help men and, whatever they want to write books and whatever the fuck, coaching
Well,
or
but
some shit.
the
But
reason that they hate men
hang
is
on,
because they're intimidated by them.
yeah, for sure. They're intimidated. There's resentment or resentment, to be even more specific. Maybe some they were bullied as a kid by alphas, Chad Thundercock, whatever the fucking case is. They really do hate men in a lot of these cases, and this is hard for guys to understand. That someone who's pretending to want to help you fucking hates you, maybe not personally, but intrinsically as a man. The fact that you are masculine in some way, and if you want to become more masculine, it's all a front. It's a fraud. They really fucking hate your guts, very much like a feminist does. And guys in the manosphere understand that. Like, feminists hate men, they hate masculinity, they're brainwashed, they're communists, they're Marxists, whatever the fucking case is, right? They get that. But the minute you put a guy that's red pill blind spot in the manosphere and he puts out some zingers, feminism's retarded, whatever, masculinity is good, they just automatically buy the shit, and they can't wrap their heads around the fact that this fraud fucking hates men and masculinity for real on a long-term, deep basis, and it's embedded into everything that they make. Guys just don't want to believe this. It's like a conspiracy theory to them, but I'm dead fucking serious. I've seen it for fucking 15 years. Socrates has seen it for even longer than me. I'm sure you've seen it like you're talking about. You've seen it all over the place. But these guys who are new, they find the Manosphere like a year ago or 2 years ago. They just like, they don't get it. Maybe if they stick around long enough, they will. Maybe that's part of it, why you see it for being in it for a long time.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I think that the issue here is that um, yeah, these people do hate men because they hate healthy masculinity. And really,
Yeah.
if you're new to the manosphere, these people are easily called out if you look at their actions. But again, this is something again, time tells all truths, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
when you see what content they put out, you see who they attack, you see what they do in their content, right? Like, are these people telling their audiences that they need to lift weights, right, which increases testosterone? Are they talking about having a healthy diet? Are they talking about being financially self-sufficient? Are they talking about educating yourself by having a love of reading and learning, right? The learning is a lifelong skill every man needs to have, but more importantly, are they talking to people about how they need to be involved in their own families? And I'm not even like, this is true even for MGTOW, right? A lot of MGTOW content creators tell people to back away from their families. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Whoa, whoa,
Right?
whoa, whoa. Yeah,
So,
it's
so,
fucked.
so you have to understand, like when I talk about being a part of your family, I'm not just talking about somebody you want to wife up. I'm talking about, you know, keeping family connections with your brothers, with your sisters, as long as those are healthy, of course, obviously, with your
Yeah.
mom, with your dad, with your aunts and uncles and your extended family, your cousins. You know, keeping those healthy relationships there. The stronger your family, the stronger your community. And the stronger your family, the stronger the next generation of your family is going to be. And that's the thing that these guys don't want to tell you. Because the second that you become self-reliant, the second that you become self-sufficient, the second that you no longer need a daily dose of red pills, they've lost a
And
customer, they've lost a Patreon, they've lost a person buying their book. And
you left the plantation basically. It's
yeah,
it's a mental plantation. They want you on the plantation picking cotton or
correct,
Patreon or whatever, really, super
correct,
chats. Yeah.
correct. And so that's
I
the
want to
issue.
pause here though,
Go ahead.
because these guys who get butthurt at me for posting memes and exposing frauds, whether it's with facts and evidence or through entertainment and memes and kind of the playful elements of just roasting them for the hypocrisy and the fraud and the malice. They come at me, but they don't really understand that like I really care about this community and I love it, and I'm willing to lose subscribers for that. I don't fuck these guys who are like I'm unsubscribing or fuck you, I'm gonna cancel this my membership for $5 a month. I'm like get the fuck out of here. I don't need your money. I don't want your money. You're an idiot. Your head is up your ass, and I don't fucking care. I care about what's true, and I care about this movement, and I care about men, and I care about the issues, and I actually care about the words coming out of my fucking mouth. It's not a front. It's not pretend. I'm dead fucking serious, and I'll put my money where my mouth is. And when these people threaten to walk away, I'm like, good, get the fuck out of here. Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. Goodbye. Don't talk to me anymore. Get out of here. And they can't even wrap their head. They're like shocked by that. They think I'm like gonna be upset that they're like taking their money or away or something or unsubscribing. I'm like, I don't fucking care. They can't even. It's just like they're just in a state of disbelief basically that I just like mean this and I
Well,
don't give a
that's
fuck
because
about your money.
yeah, but that's because they have a feminine mindset, right?
Yeah, they're
And
they're effeminate beta males basically.
yeah, yeah, and the reality is that that $5 or $10 that they're spending on you every month is probably better spent on their tampons and my doll they need or whatever, or their wine in
Yeah,
the box, because
yeah,
that's the issue, right? And so I think that when it comes to this scenario again, we're talking about the issue is this, okay? Men have this idea what's called raillery, where we fuck with each other, right? Even as friends, we fuck with each other. We do your mom jokes, we make fun of people for being gay, we whatever the deal is, right? We find some idea and we drill into it and we hammer them. Part of it is because we're friends, right? So they say men who get along with each other insult one another. Women, I'm
hmm
sorry, yeah, men who get along with each other insult one another, but women who hate each other compliment each other.
yeah.
And
And
you
it's fake. It's fake.
it's absolutely fake. And so, but that again, there's major differences. There's huge chasms between the differences between men and women. But
And
that's
that's how these frauds operate. They give each other fake compliments and they don't mean any of this shit. They don't even know each other a lot of the time. They're
right.
just sucking each other's dicks for affiliate commissions and shit like that.
Right. And again, it's I think Tech Nine called it Jeffin, where they hang around and they basically compliment you when you're there, and then the second you turn your back, the knives come out.
Yep.
And you see this, and
Yep.
again, I think the reason I think that this is important to bring up is because it's, the men's rights movement has started to kind of push forward, but there are a lot of grifters in the men's rights movement as well. And I kind of want to touch on them. I mean, we're going to be doing a follow-up to this video. Anthony and I have
Yeah.
discussed this, and we're going to go and we're going to do a deep dive probably next Saturday. At least that's the goal right now, to try to talk about these things in more detail. But, there are people out there in the men's rights movement that, or fathers' rights and the 50-50 parenting, that are just as big a grifters as the people that we see in the manosphere. And the normies on Facebook, that's really where a lot of the 50-50 parenting rights people come from. And there are a lot of our normies. But you see people like, there's a guy named Greg Parsons who unlawfully practices law, and he sells these legal papers to people. The guy's not an attorney. He lost custody of his kid, and he's just grifting other people out of hundreds of dollars to deal with this whole thing. And then
Wow.
you've got, in the same vein, there's a woman, I think she's got a PhD in theology, and she's an African American woman, and she calls herself Dr. Tory, and she does the same thing. She says, "Oh, well, you pay me this money, I'm going to help you out," and then she takes the money and run. And what's funny is that she actually is listed on ripoff reports because she's done this so often. And I think she's been sued for fraud, but don't quote me on that. I'll have to look that up. And then there's a guy who he's a Slim Shady wannabe from 20,000 years ago, and he carries himself as a paralegal. He's not. And he's constantly drunk, he's constantly stoned, and he basically tells people, if you care about your kids, you need to abandon them, right? And so it's that nonsensical stuff. But these people are grifters. They're complete grifters. There's others as well. There's like a guy named Gordon Rose who he stalked his judge and stalked her children and ended up getting caught for it. And so that's the thing that you have to think about. Like, so it's not just the Rollo Tomasis, it's not just the Donovan Sharps, or it's not just the wannabe dating coach PUAs guys, right? It's the people who try to act like there's something they're not. And that's the thing that's important, because it's like what Anthony and I talk about, where I came up with the concept of the red pill blind spot.
Yep.
The issue is that the reason men come to the manosphere is because they feel alone, they feel isolated, they're insecure, they know something's wrong, but they're not necessarily convinced that something is wrong with them, and they want to learn more. And so they come to the manosphere, and then they get fed all this garbage, and they hear all this shaming language, and they just automatically glom onto it because they're psychologically vulnerable to this sort of manipulation. And again, it's not that they're weak men. It's not that there's anything wrong with them. The majority of their depression and their insecurity and their social isolation and the problems that they're having with relationships, whether they be personal or professional, those are just natural responses to abnormal circumstances. And a lot of those circumstances have to do with, being rejected by a woman and not understanding it, losing custody of your kids, or coming through some of life's storms. And if they had people around them who could help them navigate, whether it be extended family or whether it be older, the older generation who'd been through it, people they respect, they wouldn't necessarily have to come to the manosphere, because they could talk to people in their church. They could talk to people, if they're in the army or the military, they could talk to people in their military unit. They could talk to people on the sports team if they're, involved in like intramural or college sports or something like that, or people in their community. And of course, their older male family members. They could talk to those people. But a lot of these people they don't have those connections because they're told by people in the manosphere, isolate yourself. And by the way, make your check out to me, make your credit card out to me, and I'll give you your daily dose of red pills. And all it's doing is it's creating a psychological addiction that is hurting these men more than helping them.
Yep. I'm not in it for the money, but give me your credit card information. I need it for money, but I'm not in it for the money. Blah, blah, blah.
Right. And don't get me wrong. Like I always tell people, look, if you want to support my work, there are ways to do that, but you don't have to, right? Nothing of what I do is behind a paywall. And I know somebody said they just subscribed to me. If you're going to subscribe to me and you want to see my new content, go to BitChute, go to Odyssey, go to Rumble. Most of my content is there. Not a lot of the newer content is going to be on YouTube anymore, just because of their policies. But that said, I think that sharing this information with people is the most valuable thing you can do. And the reality is, and anybody who's had a real job, right? Like a job off the internet, if you've got a job skill, or you've got a profession, or, you have a way to make money beyond, going on the internet and buying How to Be a YouTuber Steam game, right? Video game, and you started to do that. If you have a real way to do that, then you know that if you do a good job in your profession, whether you're an electrician, whether you're an attorney, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a financial advisor or something like that, right? If you do a good job, the money always takes care of itself.
Mm.
Because every time you do your job in the real world, you sign your work because they go, oh, Anthony did that or Bob did that, and they did, and you're the natural choice, and that's the point. And the same thing is true when it comes to a lot of this PUA stuff. If you're financially successful in your job, it doesn't matter if you're worth, if you're making $100,000 a year, or you're making $40,000 a year, depending on the part of the country you're in. The point is, once you become financially successful, once you're socially successful, once you're doing what you need to be doing, like your physical fitness goals and things like that, you don't necessarily have to be a bodybuilder or a supermodel or have great genetics. Women will come and find you. You don't have to hunt for women. You don't. Women will find you. You just have to know how to talk to them once they get there. You have to have a little bit of game, and you have to be perceptive enough to see it. And that's what a lot of people don't really understand. And they're like, oh my gosh, I got this job. I got this. Yeah, but are you going anywhere where you've got hobbies, where you're out socializing? Are you going to church? Are you interactive in your community? Or do you just sit at home when you're not working and you're playing on the Xbox or the PS5 or whatever you're doing, right? So you have to understand that you have to be part of your community. And that's the big thing that we don't, as Manosphere Voices, we don't teach people how to do, or I should say we don't promote, right? We don't promote them to socialize or to practice their social skills in this situation.
Are you
So,
saying you're against the business of getting your farts in a jar, like all these hoes do now? These thoughts,
well,
these
again, the problem
Twitch
is,
thoughts, Twitch
right,
thoughts.
right. So let's talk about 2020 Twitch thoughts for a second, okay?
Yeah.
All right. The reality is that pussy has never been so cheap. It's never been so cheap, okay? And all pussy has off-road miles, and it's all worth $3.99. And this idea of one-itis, where you're like, well, I'm just going to wait for this particular chick or whatever. Okay, that's great, but you have to understand that while you're waiting, she's not, right? So I'm not saying going out and bang everybody, because I don't want an incurable STD. Nobody else does, right? We're in an STD epidemic and have been in the United States since 2011. That's reality. Check the CDC; it's there. But the point is that I always ask women, if I'm serious about them, what do you bring to the table, right? Other than a pretty face and other than your willingness to spread your legs for me, what do you bring to the table? If the sex is amazing for an hour a day, what are we doing for the other 23 hours? Are you offensive? Are you narcissistic? Can I not get along with you because you're a bitch, right? Do I want to stuff you in a garbage can and leave? I mean, I mean, seriously though, there are women out there where the sex is amazing, and then you get done having sex, and you're like, "Oh my god, this woman's a nightmare," right? So you abandon her until it's time to have sex again. Then you go have sex again, and then you ditch her, right? And there's a reason why men ghost women, and it's because a lot of these women have been indoctrinated to be nightmares, and they have no job skills. Any woman on OnlyFans has no job skills other than she can swallow a load, and all her holes are available. That's really what she's saying, right? And again, when you think about these things, it's like a
What
woman.
about what about when a dude's on OnlyFans, like Jack Murphy here? He was doing a chatterbait more
Yeah,
specifically.
yeah, but it's the same thing, right? The problem you have, so one of the things that Milo says, I know somebody ragged on Milo earlier, but one of the things Milo said recently, and he said this a few separate times, I think it's kind of like a cornerstone of his presentations. One of the things he says that's absolutely objectively true is this: Milo has had so much sex, and he's had so many connections that were emotionally and psychologically meaningless, right?
You mean butt sex?
Yeah, butt sex. But it doesn't, it's not just butt sex, it's sex in general, okay? I mean, I
Okay.
understand you're excited about butt sex. I'm not, and that's okay.
No, I'm not excited about butt sex. We got to be clear about the facts here. Like
Right,
Milo is only
right.
recently trying to not be
Yeah,
gay.
yeah. But my point is that it applies to all sex, and that is that his pleasure pain sensors are just completely messed up. And
Yeah.
he went to a doctor, and the doctor said that because of his lifestyle choices, his ability to process dopamine and to experience pleasure is completely degenerate and warped. And that is because he went through too many people, or he lived a lifestyle that focused on sex for sex's sake. Now we talk about this when it happens to women. Okay, we talk about this and say, look, the thousand cock stare, women can't pair bond. All those things are true, right? But we don't talk about it when it comes to men. And like for instance, you interview male porn stars, and a lot of male porn stars in their early 30s and early 40s, they have erectile dysfunction, and their dick is dead, and they can't even get an erection without medication. And sometimes that medication is more than just a little blue pill. They need a shot. And they're fit, they're strong, they're flexible, but again, their pleasure pain sensors are so messed up that they've lost their ability to create a healthy sexual connection with a woman. And you see this in the PUA community as well. There's guys that they're older PUAs, they experience this stuff, they don't really want to talk about it, they try to rebrand themselves. So you have to understand, when it comes to OnlyFans, whether it's male or female, you can't turn a whore into a housewife, and that is the same is true for a husband. And so, if for these guys out there, while I may disagree with the whole idea of marriage given the current environment, if you decide you're one of these guys who wants to get married to a woman and you want to have children, then the first step you need to take is making sure you improve yourself. It's about, again, being physically fit. It's about
But
being.
what if you're a dude and you want to get married to a dude and then you want to have this kind of stuff going on here? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I do. The Second Amendment is a thing, and you can fly to Sweden, and Sweden actually has an assisted suicide chamber that's legal. So I think that's useful. So yeah, if you're part of the homosexual community, you're a genetic dead end anyway. And for most people, they understand that the way the LBGT community procreates is through abuse of children.
Abusive technology too, technology and
Well,
children
it's,
like that.
it's it's abuse of technology, and it's abuse of children. And let's go ahead and tangent on that for a second, because a lot of what I've done through my paralegal work is help children out of situations of child abuse. In other words, helping protective fathers protect their kids and getting them out of child abuse situations. The reason that this is important is because there's a Senate confirmation going on with an African American judge. I think her name is Jackson. And the reason I bring this up is because if you go to like RAINN, RAINN.org, that is a sexual assault. It's an advocacy organization to help women, to help men, to help children get out of abusive sexual assault situations. Okay, one of the big issues they talk about is not necessarily the act of sexual assault itself or the act of sexual abuse itself, but it's what are the tools people use to get these children in these situations, to groom them, and to get these weak people here to groom them to deal with this in order to be able to access it so they don't fight back, right? Well, one of the big issues is exposure to adult themes, to nudity, pornography, and it's mentioned over and over and over again. All the academic literature that talks about grooming and sexual assault, one of the key elements is exposure to adult themed content, adult themed material. Again, it's pornography, it's child pornography, it's nudity, and it's all these different things, right? And so what
I'm
happens?
even hearing that a lot of Ukraine is one of the top sources in the world for child sex slavery and molestation. I don't know, some shit like that. Have
It's
you seen
it's
anything about
it's
that?
it's one of the top places for child trafficking, and
Yeah, yeah.
and they're one of the top producers in the world for child porn. Child
Wow.
sexual. In fact, what's interesting is, again, we'll tangent to Ukraine in a second, because there's an issue about child trafficking I want to address when it comes to Ukraine. It's just kind of a little tidbit. But the reason I bring this up is because there's this big push where people are virtue signaling for child porn. Okay, the reason there's a lot of reasons I stand against it when it comes to the ethical reasons and the Christian reasons and my Christian opposition to this sort of thing. But let's go ahead and take my religious views out of this for a second, and let's look at the objective science. And the objective science says that if you're a child, the biggest determining factor of whether you're going to grow up and be a criminal, or whether you're going to grow up as a woman and you're going to be a prostitute, or you're going to be a sex slave, or you're going to get sex trafficked, is whether or not you were sexually assaulted as a child. Okay, those are the biggest indicators. And so the number one place to find children who are open to sexual abuse is single motherhood, because there's no father there to protect the child, and because single mothers, often it's the mother's new boyfriend who the boyfriend targets the mom specifically to get at the kid. And you see this over and over and over again. It's like, I think that these types of predators are like in the top 10 of all child abusers, just as an FYI. The reason I bring this up, though, bringing this full circle back, is that these children are exposed to adult sexual themes in their schools through institutional grooming for child abuse. It's the gay pride parades where these guys run around nude. It's the sex education, which is over sexualized. It's the books that they get in their elementary schools that now mothers are now they've discovered and they're speaking out against it. But it is also judges like Jackson who refuse to hold child porn people accountable for what they do. And what nobody wants to talk about is you have all these people who are watching child porn. How many of these people are using this child porn to groom children? And they're going, look, they do it on the screen. We should do it now, right? It's a sick concept, but it's something that has to be discussed. And that's the thing about the red pill. The red pill is about confronting the uncomfortable truth and dealing with it head on. And that's the problem. So you have these people who say, well, I support the LGBT movement. Okay, well, that's great. I'm glad you support the LGBT movement. But did you know that 70% of all bisexual people are bisexual because they were sexually assaulted as a child? And this is self-reporting. This isn't a conspiracy theory. Or the fact that the vast majority of child abuse predators, and I say child abuse, I don't talk about pedophiles because pedophiles, it limits it to an age range, right? So you have pedophilia and you have pederasty, and pedophilia is like prior to a certain age and pederasty is like teenage kids. I'm not talking about that because I think that both of those conversations are limiting and it's a false reframe. I think we need to talk about it in terms of child abuse because that's really an all-encompassing term and that's really what it is. So when you talk about child abuse and you say, look, did you know that the majority of child abuse happens where it's men, and the majority of boys who get abused, they're being abused by men? Now, the LGBT community is going to tell you, oh, well, those men are straight. But they're also telling you that men who have sex with other men are straight too. So do you really believe what it is they're saying? I mean, again, this goes back to critical thinking. It goes back to deductive reasoning, and it goes back to just, common sense. And how do you manage conflict and how do you manage disagreement? Because I'll tell you, when it comes to being a healthy masculine man, there are, even if you're an atheist, there are a variety of valid and legitimate secular reasons to not be a part of that community. And why those communities in the long term, not only are they genetic dead ends, but sociological dead ends.
If
And
we can pause on that last part, that's what frustrates me. One of the things that frustrates me the most, not only about the kids and their future, but in this picture, it's like your choices, Dave and Dave, they're both named Dave. And I generally have liked Dave Rubin over time to some degree, is in interviews, advocacy for free speech, stuff like that. But it's like they are aggressively, at a severe and extreme degree, evading and avoiding the consequences of their choices. They're evading responsibility in a profound Jack Murphy kind of way. And the average person in the conservative movement right now doesn't even understand that. Prager University was celebrating this recently. A bunch of other conservatives, like, it was fucking sick. Now, I'm not even a conservative necessarily either, but this is retarded.
And that's because that lifestyle has been allowed to infiltrate conservative circles, right?
Yeah. This is a genetic dead end. And like, that's what this means. You want to put your dick in other dudes' buttholes. Okay. It has consequences. And you are doing everything you can, spending $100,000 or more to evade that consequence like a pussy. You're too much of a pussy to face the consequences of what you want to, how you want to live and what you want to do. And it's really aggravating.
Well, and let's be honest, okay? Let's call it what it is. This is so the idea here is they're like, oh well, we're just adopting. All right, let's talk about adoption for a minute because
they're not even adopting though. They're not even adopting. I read into what they did. Those two babies that are currently growing in surrogates, they have the same mother. So some chick sold her fucking eggs, sold her fucking children for money.
Right.
And they're doing all this shit. It's sick.
Well, right. Hear me out.
Okay.
It's adoption. And the reason it's adoption is because both of the husband and the husband have to adopt the other man's child. It is adoption. Good point. Let's be honest, what it also is. Adoption, paid adoption, is child trafficking. Now, this brings me very neatly to my point about Ukraine. So Ukraine, it turns out, they have an adoption agency in Ukraine where they run a baby mill. And they're like, I think they said that there was this issue where there were all these babies in a basement. I think they were saying there were like 800 babies. Okay.
Whoa.
You have 800 babies for sale in a fucking basement. And you have to understand, in the Western world, the average adoption for people when it comes to this is it costs like $100,000. In Ukraine, they were saying it's like 45,000. Now, I've heard of much lower numbers, but the point is that you have these women who may be sexually assaulted, but they're absolutely getting paid to sexually traffic their bodies to traffic unborn children. We're not talking this. There is no. You'll never be able to convince me that those are traditional family values. That those are Christian values. Now I understand that when it comes to this sort of thing, there's a lot of people out there that want kids and they can't have them. Well, guess what? Choose a man who's got healthy levels of sperm. Okay. Don't eat soy. Don't drink out of plastic. Don't do the things that reduce your sperm count. Don't do things that increase your estrogen, like drink beer, for example. Those things, they interfere with sperm production. And if a woman can't have a kid, hey, that sucks. But maybe you need to be thinking about that. Again, this goes out of the, it basically goes and you're talking about choosing a healthy spouse and having a healthy family. And like I said, as a MGTOW, this is one of those scenarios where, I don't necessarily promote the family. I'm not opposed to it. And I wish that one day there was no need for a philosophy like the MGTOW philosophy. But unfortunately, in the world we have today, it's an absolute, it's a football field full of landmines, right? And the problem that you have, though, is that this degeneracy has seeped into conservative circles. And I'm talking about the GOP, the log cabin Republicans, and all these different individuals who basically, it's seeped in. Like rhinos control the Republican Party now. They're not Republicans. They're not conservatives. They are.
Yeah.
They are rebranded Democrats. And you can tell by the way they vote, you can tell by the way they speak, or the fact
Yep.
they speak out of both sides of their mouth. So you have to understand that the problems that we're talking about
They're
throughout
part of
the stream today.
they're part of the Uniparty. I mean, the
Yes.
official taglines of their party are almost meaningless at this point.
Well, and the thing you have to remember, though, is that the problems that the conservative movement is happening in the normie sphere are the same problems that the manosphere is happening, right? You've got shills that have infiltrated. You've got
Yep.
grifters on the inside. You've got self-serving narcissists on the inside, and they're all saying, "Oh, you need to elect me, so give me your money, right?
Yep.
You need to buy my dating coach program. You need to give me money. If
Yep.
you and really at the end of the day, what's happening is that a lot of these grifters, just like the Republican Party, you're not creating self-reliant, resilient men who have a healthy level of critical thinking skills and deductive reasoning and
Let's
the
talk
ability to handle
about
conflict. What you're finding is that you're creating a generation and a community of sycophants who basically are just pay pigs.
exactly, and that is actually a perfect segue to this comment because this guy is saying let's focus on this comment and related to what you're saying with the pay pigs for the manosphere. That's a perfect way to put it. By the way, all these simps that just buy all this crap and they don't even talk to women, they don't make their life better, they don't do anything. But anyway, the pay pigs. But here, I think in politics, a lot of these conservatives, this guy's saying average conservatives aren't bad. It's the corrupt politicians we continue to vote for and support. Who the fuck's doing that? The average conservatives, at least in the Republican Party, and the Democrats and their stuff is just as bad, if not significantly worse. I mean, it's like fucking, you're comparing 90 out of 100 retarded versus 100 out of 100 retarded. Like, what the fuck is the difference? But it's
Right.
the leaders are elected because the average conservative is a fucking pussy. That's why this happens, and he's a retard, and he's like fucking like he's a lefty socialist from 20 years ago. Like
Well,
it's
and let's
retarded.
be honest, we don't know that they were lawfully elected, especially in communities that have
Yeah,
moved to 100% mail-in voting, right? Because I'll tell
yeah,
you what, voter fraud is nothing new. When I was in Washington State, we switched to mail-in voting, and there were credible allegations of voter fraud a long time, for a long time. So like 25, 30 years. So you have to understand this is not new. As far as writing books are concerned, I saw that comment. Yeah, I wrote The Feminist Lie. It was never about equality. It was a bestseller on multiple bestseller lists on
hmm
Amazon. Anthony brings it to 21 Convention and gives out a few copies. And a lot of people still buy it. If you check it out, I think it's got 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's got over 100 positive reviews.
It
So
is the anti-feminist Bible of the Manosphere. Everybody should
and
read it.
it's Red Pill 101. If you really want to have a good place to start about the feminist issues and a lot of the issues here, check out The Feminist Lie. It's a great introductory book. And I'm also writing a book right now about court corruption using Colorado as a case study. And it's similar to The Feminist Lie. It's going to upset a lot of people, and it's going to be, it's very, very red pilling, but it's also going to assist people in the legal community to explain why Colorado is the cancer that it is today, because there's a lot of reasons. The other thing I would say too is that while there's a lot of really solid conservatives, I think with the voter fraud, the voter rigging, the gerrymandering, and the corporate communism that you see that infects all levels of our society, that's what is limiting. That's the main limiting factor in all these situations where we can't get valid America First candidates in. And the reality is, let's
Yep.
talk about America First for just a quick second, because I say America First, I mean that in its truest sense in the dictionary definition. So, let's say you're a guy and you're making $100,000 a year, right? But you have a lot of bills, or let's just say 50,000 a year. Okay, you're 50,000 a year. You're sole wage earner. Your wife doesn't work because she's at home taking care of your kids. Okay, and the next door neighbor comes over and says, "Hey, can I borrow $5,000?" Well, you don't have $5,000 to give him because you're taking care of your family. So it's you tell the guy no, but you don't tell him no because maybe he's been your friend for 10 years. You don't tell him no because you don't like him. You don't tell him no because you think he's a loser. You tell him no because you can't afford it, right? That's the reality. You take care of your family first. Well, in the
I can
United
hear your
States,
I can hear your dog in the background, by the way.
yeah, both my dogs are sitting there coming around. They're kind of whining and moaning because they know I'm talking. And they want attention, so I'm petting them and stuff. So you might hear me slap them around a little bit. Anyway, so but we look at the United States and we think, or I should say that the people who kind of lord over us think that our taxpayer funds need to go for people who don't pay taxes. So they go to other countries, they go to criminals, they go to all these people who really didn't earn them, and we can't afford it. Now we're in trillions and trillions of dollars worth of debt that we're never going to get out of. And we've
Yep.
got people who basically all their whole goal is to loot our tax base, right? The goal
Yep.
isn't to fix the country, it's to loot the tax base and make everybody suffer so that we're modern day serfs and they're modern day, medieval lords.
The
That's the
goal
goal.
is, yeah, it's feudalism, basically.
It's feudal, yeah.
New Age feudalism. Yep.
Yeah, it's a techno feudalism. And so anybody
If you, a lot of people they get hung up on the communism stuff, and in my understanding, it's more of like a stepping stone to feudalism, and communism is almost like a distraction. They're not going to let that happen. They want, I think, what you're saying, feudalism
Well,
and socialism and
communism,
communism.
yeah, communism is a step to tyranny, right? And it's a
Hmm.
step to this feudalism. So while
Hmm.
communism is important, the point is that if you look at Stalin and you look at prominent communists, they were all feudal lords, and if you disagreed with them, they killed you. So that's kind of the program there.
Okay.
Give me about 10 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and put my dogs out so they can bark at the neighbors. So I'll be
Okay.
right back.
I'll hang out with the chat here. What's up, boyos? World Economic Forum. They write all of it down. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. They have their own YouTube channel, website. You can literally read like the entire New World Order. They just spell it out in plain English and they throw it in your face. Feudalism or despotism? I think feudalism, but I mean, at this point, America is becoming like a fascist shithole, as I see it. It's
I'm
like,
about
what was the point of the Nazis even losing if America just becomes a fucking new age fascist shithole that invades the world and blows everything up, and it's just insane.
Well, and the thing you want to remember too is if you really want to have an idea of where the United States is headed, look at Canada. So Canada has a lot of land. They don't have a lot of citizens, obviously, but the thing that they've done is they've pushed everybody to live in cities. So they've tried to urbanize everything and they've done everything in their power to destroy rural communities. And that's what the United States is trying to do. The United States is trying to destroy rural communities because the rural communities are the strongholds of healthy masculinity. They're the strongholds of conservative values, Christian values, American values. And Zen Master says it's the last stand in America. I agree with that. But the thing is you have to remember there is no other place to go. You hear all these expats going, "I'm going to get out of the country." Well, guess what? Their laws are worse than ours.
Dude,
We
a year ago, these people were like, "Oh, move to Ukraine. It's a golden land. It's cheap, and there's a bunch of hot women," which is true. But it's like this place is a fucking war zone now. Like move here, move there. Like they moved. I love Poland, but like the Poland's right on the fucking border of that shit. They're
Right.
fucking next for all we fucking know. And you're right.
Right.
The laws are worse elsewhere too. And it's like there is nowhere to go.
Well,
Reagan was famous for saying this, right? If freedom dies here, the whole world's fucked.
it's true.
Paraphrasing.
It's true.
Paraphrasing.
Right. Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
true. And I think really, if you're going to move out of the cities, move out of the counties of the big cities, move into the rural,
Yeah.
if you can work remotely, live in those rural places. And it's possible to do. And that's the thing is people don't understand it. And you're going to find people who have a lot more similar values to, people like us than, these other places. So, there's advantages to doing it. But again, bringing this back full circle, nobody wants us talking like this. Nobody wants us having these conversations because they are a threat to the powers that be, just like in the Manosphere, right? Because they want you to consume, they want you to purchase stuff, they want you to live in debt, because once you do that, then they control you. And that's the thing with the Manosphere. If you look at the Manosphere as a microcosm of our society, that's exactly what's happening is these people want you dependent. They do not want strong, self-resilient men. They want men who are sheep. And the reality is we need to create more leaders. And every man can be a leader. It doesn't matter who you are. And this is one of the things when we were talking earlier, I know we tangented a bit, but one of the things that I really want to address is the dilution of the masculine message, the dilution, the diluting of the masculine wisdom and the institutional wisdom. Nobody wants to, again, none of these grifters talk about the importance of family. None of these grifters talk about the importance of church or the importance of community. And again, you don't need to be a Christian to promote the idea of Christian community, because
Or
Christian
even
communities are safer.
they don't even talk about the importance of something like leadership. Like that's how fucking retarded a lot of these grifters are. Like basic stuff like leading your family or leading your relationship. They don't really talk about that. It's always like these keyboard jockey fucking theories they ripped off of some message board from 10 years ago. Hypergamy is one of the most notable examples, but it's beyond that. I mean, it's like being a leader is part of being a man, and it comes down to leading your family and your relationship, your friends,
Yeah.
whatever. Like lead, 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 lead. And that's just been dying in the culture and the manosphere even too.
Right. No, I agree.
Um,
And that's and when we talk about, diluting the message, that's the reason I want to talk about the whole rainbow pill. And what I mean by that is that, if we talk about the manosphere in terms of the red pill and we talk about the manosphere in terms of the blue pill, again, the red pill is the uncomfortable truth, often the painful truth. The blue
mhm.
pill is a comfortable lie. But now you've got all these different colored pills, and you got a color of a pill for every day of the month.
Yeah.
And the most notable being, oh, the black pill. This person's so black pill. Look, all that's marketing. That's just somebody wanting to feel important. The reality is this, okay? People who identify as black pill, they're not. They're red pilled, and they've given up. They don't see hope. They don't
Mm.
see a light at the end of the tunnel. They don't want to be the change that they need. They don't want to be the change anybody else needs. And so they're depressed and upset, and they're living in red pill rage, and they're like, and they've given up. And I get that. I understand it. But don't necessarily call yourself black pilled, because you're not. You're red pilled. You're just disillusioned. And the same is through with like the purple pill and all these things. And I even talk about the purple pill power bottom as kind of a joke, because
Yeah.
it has a lot of truth. But the point is that all these different colored pills dilute the fact that the red pill stands for uncomfortable truth. And then you see the detractors say, well, the red pill community is focused on these lies and this and that. That's not actually true. Most people in the red pill community, with the exception of certain content creators, are focused on the truth. But the
Mhm.
problem is, and I say verifiable truth, right? But the problem is that you have so many people out there trying to send out confusing messages that it's difficult for somebody who consumes red pill content to really get what the facts are. And again, anybody who tells you not to be self-sufficient, anybody who tells you got to come back to my thing for red pill truth every day, anybody who talks about anything other than personal empowerment, financial empowerment, and all those other things, those people are trying to make you dependent.
Yeah.
The goal here is to
Money, muscles, and game, bro. Money, muscles, and game. It's like,
exactly.
which they have none of it. It's just fucking sick.
Well,
What
it's
do
a
you think about
it's an
this kind of
exchange
fraud
point.
too? Yeah, yeah. What do you think about this kind of fraud? If we can tangent here a little bit,
Sure.
this is Michaela Peterson, the
Yeah.
daughter of Jordan B. Peterson, Jordan
Sure.
Beta Peterson. He actually liked the photo. This is his daughter and his granddaughter.
Sure.
We can see his granddaughter. There's a bed on the ground, which is a red flag, number one.
Yeah, of course.
It looks like there's strawberries or something or toys on the bed. Anyway, there's a fucking little 1-year-old baby or something sitting on the bed, which is on the floor. His daughter, that's his granddaughter. And then his daughter here is basically naked or close to it, in little fuzzy fucking slut slippers. I mean, 100%. This is like, I mean, camel toe going on. Like, this is a disaster. And this dude fucking, this father
Well,
and
that's the
grandfather
thing.
liked it. This
Well,
is people's
that's
conservative hero. Like, it's crazy.
well, and you have to understand though that Jordan Peterson, he was a professor who became popular, right?
Yeah.
And
He worked
um,
at the UN too, by the way. He admitted that on Twitter about a
of,
month ago.
of course, I mean, the guy's been, the guy's highly successful, okay, and he's been around all these different, high powered circles. And you also have to remember the thing about Jordan Peterson is because he's Canadian. Jordan Peterson, for a long time, was a classic liberal. He hasn't changed those views, and I don't necessarily have a problem with him because he's a classic liberal. But people identify him as a conservative. He's not, and if you talk to him, he admits he's a classic liberal. Okay, so when you have these
That's
conversations,
what he says, but he really just seems like a lefty claiming to be a classic liberal, like Dave Rubin almost.
classic liberals are leftists. Let's be clear, they are
I don't know about
leftists.
that, man. I don't know about that because a lot of the founding fathers would claim to be classic. I mean, they wouldn't say classic back then, but I think a lot of them would be classic liberals too,
Well,
in my understanding.
they're using liberal in the term of dictionary definition, whereas we're using the political definition. So you have to understand that
Yeah.
even though they're using the words, they mean something different today than they meant when the founding fathers were running around.
Okay.
But with that said, um, he's a classic liberal, and he's got the daughter who's got multicolored underwear because I mean, literally, if you look at that picture is a textbook example of the modern woman, right?
Oh yeah. Let me pull it back up.
Yeah,
1 second.
she's a textbook example of the modern single woman.
Yep.
She's got underwear that don't match her bra. She's got the dollar store slippers.
She's a feminist queen.
Well, and
I
in
mean,
addition to that, she's got the fake hair color, right? So that
yep.
hair color that she has right now, we used to call that the hair dye of a woman of a certain age. So basically, all these older women they wanted to hide their gray and they wanted to be
Yeah.
redheads, but they didn't want to be, they wanted subtlety. So they would dye their hair that unnatural color of red
Yeah,
to
that dark red. Yeah.
exactly.
Well,
And
it's the
you see
color of anger. It's the color of anger too. Every girl who dyes their hair red I've ever fucking met in my life and I've ever seen is fucking angry, 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 deeply angry.
sure.
I mean, it's like this
So
is fucking. Yeah, this is a perfect. You said it perfectly though.
yeah, I
This
mean,
is the perfect example of a modern feminist
yeah,
skank. I don't know how else to put it.
she's the modern feminist woman who's been indoctrinated that the only so the modern women, most modern women judge their okay, so men judge their value, modern men judge their value by what they've accomplished. And I'm talking about healthy masculine men, right? But the majority of modern women judge their value by who's been between their legs.
Yeah.
They judge their value by who paid for their trip to Paris or who paid for, the car they're driving or who paid for this or who paid for that. That's how they
Or
judge
how
their
much
value.
money they get off OnlyFans. My ex-wife was this exact same way, dude, with the hooker
Sure,
stuff, being a hooker.
sure.
She, as far as I could tell, at the very end, obviously, when I figured this out, it was literally her self-esteem was literally intrinsically tied to the dollar amount she could charge per hour. It was that, and this is not that different from most women.
Right.
Whether it's one of these or a Twitch thought or an OnlyFans thought or whatever the fucking latest, seeking arrangement skank, whatever the fucking latest trend of being a skank is, they're all like, their worth is tied to the dollar. It's so
Yes.
fucking sick, man.
Well, again, it's because modern women don't value ethics and trust and loyalty and commitment. They don't.
It doesn't even exist to them. Like
Yeah.
they couldn't even they wouldn't know if they tripped over it. Like,
No, no. That's why I say, the way that you determine whether or not the woman you're about to sleep with is a thought or not is you ask her, what do you bring to the table? And if she doesn't mention ethics or integrity or anything like that, then you know that, she's a fire and forget. That's how you know, right?
yeah,
So you have to understand. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. Unfortunately, it's sad because like here, let me give you an example. So a lot of these conferences, especially like the MRA conferences, okay, and there's not very many of them anymore. But what they are is they are conferences so that divorced post-wall women can find people to date and have sex with, right? So they treat them like it's a big deal. And you see some of this happening in CPAC as well. You see these married women who claim that they're traditional, and they're on the bang bus behind their husband's back at CPAC, right? They get drunk, they bang everybody. And that's this reality. I mean, that's what conferences are in general.
I've been to CPAC,
So,
a couple times, 3 of them now. Yeah, it's
right,
it's actually
right.
the best one. It's still a disaster though.
Well, I think
It's
the red pill,
actually the other one's even worse. Like I'm not kidding. Like
yeah. And I like Tony. I respect Tony. We can disagree. That's no problem. I believe that a lot of I think Rollo has tried to hijack the red pill community or the red pill idea, but he's not been successful. And that
yeah,
leads me to something else that Anthony and I talked about the other day. And I apologize. I was going to get that article to Anthony and I didn't. But the idea here is that there was a psychologist that interviewed these teen boys, and I want to say it was in Australia, and this was probably about a month or two ago. I saw the article, and I think the article's relatively new. Um, Basically, the psychologists were um, were interviewing these teen boys, and I say teen boys, obviously teenagers, but also they were interviewing boys and men in their early 20s. And all these men and these boys were saying, "I'm never getting married. I'm never getting married. I'm never having children. And I'm choosing not to get married. I'm choosing not to have children." And when they were asked why, one of the teenage boys said, "Well, I have an uncle. My uncle was happily married. His wife cheated on him, and then she divorce raped him and destroyed his life and destroyed his relationship with his children. And I watched it firsthand. This isn't on the internet. They're not consuming MGTOW content. They're not consuming red pill content. They're not consuming PUA content. They're basically saying, I saw this firsthand, and this is why I'm not doing it." And there's other people saying, "Well, I was raised by a single mom. I watched what she did to my father. I watched what she did to these other people. And I don't want a woman like that. And all modern women seem to act like my mom. And I don't want to be a part of that." And so all these psychologists are like, "I don't understand why these boys feel this way. I don't understand that, right? This is something that's really shocking to the conscience." And at the end of the day, it's like, well, you could censor red pill content all you want. You could censor the manosphere all you want. But when you turn off the computer, when you turn off your phone, and when you interact with the real world, these young boys and these men are seeing this firsthand, and they are independently coming to the same conclusions. So if you want to fix society and you want men to come back to the plantation, you can't do it without changing the laws and without educating other men.
mm,
Educating men to be self-reliant, financially secure, and basically men with critical thinking skills, deductive reasoning, and how to manage conflict. Because I'll tell you what, if your conflict resolution skills mirror that of your favorite content creator, you're never going to have a relationship with anybody, because the second that you get in some little non-traversy argument, it's going to turn into World War III. And really, that's feminine energy talking, and that's why you see a lot of these content creators. They create these problems that have no real viable long-term solutions, and they only serve to destroy communities. They don't serve to help them. And that's what small towns figure out. Small towns have figured out a long time ago that you could hate your next door neighbor, but when a storm comes, you're helping each other. When the tornado comes, you're helping each other, rebuild, because they understand that being part of a community, being part of an intact community, and being a part of the solution is more important than being a part of the problem. And that's something that a lot of young men need to learn, and they don't have role models in which to do it because they're too busy demonizing the people who would teach them. That's why you hear this like, okay, boomer, or we're going to go ahead and blame every generation. We're going to blame the greatest generation. We're going to blame this and we're going to blame that. I'm not saying that some of those criticisms aren't valid. Many of them are extremely valid. But the thing is that young men need to learn from old men's experiences, whether those old men are your nephew, or I'm sorry, your uncles or your grandfathers, or just people who've lived the life in the community. And even if the only thing they have to teach is how to be a good example of what not to do, they still have something to teach. Whether you're willing to listen or not is up to you.
yeah. I'm uploading a meme right now. 1 second. It's a very
Right
important
on.
meme.
Right on.
Very, very important.
Yeah. So I mean, and
I had to find this one. I didn't have it locally for some reason. I had it from my phone uploaded. I had to transfer it. It's very important, man. It's
That's
yeah, the man.
that's a real bad picture of his face. Like, what the heck is that?
Well, we had to make him blind. Whoever made this, I don't know who made this, but yeah, I mean, in the skit from Dave Chappelle, obviously Dave was pretending to be blind, so we had to make him blind. We have his wife there too on the left-hand side,
Right.
brother Donovan Bixby.
Right.
It's funny because he's super racist. Like, remember in the Red Man group one time, me and you were on together, and Donovan flat out said he's like he claimed to be racist very openly, and I was just like shocked. I'm like, dude, what the fuck? And you're like, well, Donovan, I'm half Mexican, and I don't think you're right on this issue. And he's like, no, 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 no. Like, everybody's racist. Well, it's like, bro, he said he was racist. I was like, Jesus, holy shit, dude.
Well, he said it was something along the lines that because he felt that white people were racist and he'd experienced racism,
Yeah.
he felt it was okay to hate them back.
Yeah, but he hates black people. I think he hates black people the most, though. He doesn't even hate white people the most. He hates black people, and he's black. It makes no fucking sense. It's just like this meme. That's why it's so funny.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, right? There's a lot of people in the Negro Manosphere who hate the Pookie and Ray Ray types, right? And they hate the people who embrace the thug culture. They hate the people who embrace the disposable lifestyle, right? The idea of being ghetto rich, the idea of having new money and having to flaunt it. That right there is a sign of insecurity. Let me tell you something. If you have to flaunt your possessions, like if you look at somebody who is rich, and I mean objectively rich, and they've been rich for generations, right? They're worth millions of dollars. They don't flaunt their money. They don't flaunt their money. They don't flaunt their jewelry. They don't flaunt they don't have any need to do that. And those people who do it don't have any personality beyond their materials and their possessions. And so, if somebody has to flaunt their vehicle they drive, or they have to flaunt their house, or they have to flaunt their boat, and some kind of like weird insecure success porn, that's not a person that you really want to look to for a lot of wisdom when it comes to how to be a healthy masculine male, because those people are usually grifters, and they're usually people who want to take advantage of you, and they're not looking for friends. They're looking for servants, and they're looking for sycophants. And that's the reality when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And so, like, when you look at Donovan Sharp, he's trying to do success porn, and that's what a lot of these people do. And the reality is that men need to learn to be successful, whether they're rich or whether they're poor. And if you talk to a lot of older men, a lot of these older men, there were times where they were eating ramen and they were thankful for it. And then there were other times where they were eating steak and they were thankful for it. And so, that's the thing about life, and that's the thing about resiliency, is that if you teach men to be self-sufficient and resilient, even if they're dirt poor at some point, you teach them to be resilient, and all of a sudden they raise themselves out of poverty. That's the American ideal, and it is true and has been true for 100 years. And if you can't make ends meet in a city, then move to the country, right? You can relocate around the country. It's a huge country. You can find success if you're willing to make the sacrifices to do it. And you don't have to sacrifice your morality, and you don't have to sacrifice your ethics, and you shouldn't sacrifice your masculinity in order to do it. And that's the issue. Is, again, you get these ghetto rich people didn't Donovan showcase his inflatable hot tub at one point? So that's the issue, right?
I don't know. I showcased my inflatable hot tub, but I just called it Beaver Pond. I don't really care that it's inflatable. I just wanted it to bang chicks in.
Because that's the type of women you're bringing over, right? I mean, these women think that like a 4-course meal is McDonald's.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just banging chicks. I don't really give a shit about it. What I'm not is some bling bling money dog piece of shit. And that is what a lot of these frauds promote, the success porn and stuff like that. And that's just gross to me, and it's all fake and retarded. I remember one time when Tony Bruno, he commented on it to me because he was a fan of Donovan many years ago. But Conovan was trying to show off all his shoes, and he had like 40 pairs of shoes, and it's like, dude, this is where your super chat Patreon money goes. It goes to buy shoes, and it goes to buy weight loss things for his wife and stuff. Like, it's just, and the fake chains, like all this bullshit. It's just sick, man. And the rented cars and the lease stuff, like, it's all just so stupid, man. It's so dumb.
Well, did he have the purses to go with the shoes? Because I mean, that's like
Probably.
that's like a woman thing, right? You go to a
Probably.
woman's house and she's got like 100 pairs of shoes. That's like part of their DNA. I get all that, but
Yeah.
for men to have 40 pairs of shoes, I mean, that's some feminine stuff right there.
Yeah. It's very fruity to put it lightly. Yeah. What a shit show, man. Well, it's
Well,
been fun.
yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah, and I would say, kind of in closing, if you're watching this video, find men who help you be more masculine. Find men who promotes your self-reliance, whether again, in all areas, socially, professionally, financially, and personally with regard to your family. And avoid those men who all they do is focus on the negative. Because the reality is that men are emotional creatures too, and they can be just as easily manipulated under the right circumstances as women. And
Yep.
don't fall for the red pill blind spot, you know?
Bingo. Yeah. Oh, we got a little super chat. Let me throw this up. Thanks for your shekels, Mr. IMDPP, Discipline, Priorities, and Purpose. Divorce is what brought me to the red pill community. She cheated and a victim in the courts. I thank God I didn't get kids by her. Yeah, I've been there, man. Well, it's been a fun chat. It's been a very fun stream, DDJ. Appreciate your time. I think we'll wrap up. It's been almost 2 hours, hour and 45. Make sure you visit missandrytoday.com. I appreciate everyone tuning into the surprise Sunday morning live stream. Do visit missandrytoday.com. Check out his channels on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute. Just go to any of those platforms and type Miss Andry Today, or probably even DDJ, and it should pull
Actually,
right up.
Miss Andrew today is probably better. Also, you can go to you can find me on Minds and Gab as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, man. I appreciate your time. Throat's a little rough today. I appreciate you guys tuning in the chat, and I'll see you probably on Thursday or Saturday. I think Saturday we're going to do a part 2 to the stream and focus, more explicitly on particular frauds rather than the general issues and the meta issues of what we've discussed today, the overarching themes of what goes on. So DDJ, thank you again. Everybody else, peace out. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the